Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have another fantastic show for you today. Briahna, what is going on?
Well, we have economist Richard Wolff here to discuss the housing crisis and what's really at the root of it. Also, our Rising panel will discuss the debates states are having over gender-affirming care for young people. But first, Ron DeSantis is suing the FDA over what he alleges to be delayed approval from the agency for Florida's Canadian prescription drug importation program. Let's watch.
After 630 days, we still sit here waiting for an answer. And so it's our view that we've waited long enough. And so today we're taking action. The state of Florida has now filed a lawsuit against the FDA. They have unlawfully withheld and unreasonably delayed approval of Florida's program, and we think this violates federal law. So we're asking a federal judge to order the FDA to put an end to that delay and to approve Florida's program. Included in the lawsuit are claims under the Federal Freedom of Information Act. In early July, ACA filed a FOIA request seeking records from the FDA to increase transparency on their approval process. Under the Act, FDA had 30 working days to respond to our request, and I don't think you'll be too surprised, we still have not received a response to our request. So the clock's been ticking. We have a right to know what the FDA has been doing the last 2 years to ensure that are they putting politics over patients? Are they putting the interest of big pharma over the interest of average Floridians and taxpayers? And that's what we need to find out.
The original request for approval was sent by DeSantis back in November of 2020. What do you make of this, Robby?
Yeah, this is a great idea. Yes, they approved this plan a long time ago, and Biden is apparently on board with doing exactly this, using imports to lower drug prices. So it's just like an obviously good thing that should be done, and what is getting in the way? The FDA, because they're slow moving. It's not even necessarily that they're against this or have any problem with this. They're just a slow-moving bureaucracy that takes too long on everything, and this is why we don't have good health care. This is why everything's too expensive. Not the whole reason, but it's part of the reason. Things take too long to get improved. There's too much red tape. There's too many hurdles put up by bureaucracies that just are the enemies of progress.
It's interesting that you say that, because Ron DeSantis is actually pointing to another cause. I don't dispute that the FDA has been slow moving. We talked about this in the context of the whistleblower who warned the FDA about problems at the Abbott baby food manufacturing plant, and the FDA still didn't act for some time, and not fast enough to prevent 2 infants from dying after that crisis. But the reality here is that Ron DeSantis is pointing to the idea that it could be pharmaceutical lobbying that is causing them to drag their feet here, because obviously local pharmaceutical industries
they don't want competition.
Absolutely. To lose profit. So whatever the case, I think ultimately we're in a good place where we have people across the political spectrum arguing for Americans to get access to lower cost drugs. I don't see a problem.
I'm not on the pharmaceutical companies. They should have to compete with every other pharmaceutical provider on earth, and there should be less gatekeeping. The FDA should stop, preventing competitors, because competition does. If you actually have actual competition instead of structured competition or large companies lobbying the government to prevent real competition, you do bring down prices. You tend to bring down prices. So it's very interesting, and I've said I support at the federal level the plan to give the government more power to negotiate prices with pharmaceuticals having to do with Medicare. That seems like a no-brainer to me. I don't even know why that's coded as like a far left policy or something.
Agreed.
It's actually very similar to what I said about what will happen with tuition prices if we keep moving toward the income-based repayment model that I talked about. If the government's going to help people afford this service, no matter what the price of it is, the provider of the service will just raise the price forever, astronomically. They'll face no downward pressure. So it's remarkably the government if they're going to do this, they have to do something to do this. Or else the incentives will just be so broken.
Yeah, strong populist point for Ron DeSantis here.
Yeah. Well, Florida's Surgeon General echoed DeSantis and acknowledged that high prices Americans pay in comparison to other countries.
Leaders in the federal government right now, the FDA, the Biden administration, have prioritized the interests of pharma, and be very clear, their interest is to keep their profits high And they do that best by making Americans pay more for drugs than anyone else in the country, anyone else in the world.
One reason for the discrepancy in cost between the U.S. and Canada is how we regulate, or rather how the lack of regulation over Big Pharma. While in Canada does have more federal regulations that put caps on certain prescriptions. Here in the U.S., we allow the prices to be determined through Medicare, even though U.S. law prohibits Medicare from negotiating the price directly with manufacturers. Now, like we said, that's something that is going to be changed, I think, because of the Inflation Reduction Act. Americans still pay about 55% more for prescriptions than other first world countries. Let's take a look at this chart. You can see here some drug prices in the U.S. compared to Canada. For autoimmune diseases, you could save a whopping 88% in Canada. Asthma patients could save 72% if they had the Canadian option. Diabetes patients could save 74% for their prescriptions. And EpiPen, while it's still nearly $300, Americans pay over $600. And this chart shows that year over year, analysis found the U.S. increasing top-selling prescriptions by an average of $165 from 2020 to 2021. Comparatively, Canadian drug prices have dropped by $1 in the same period.
Yeah, this is unconscionable. And we talk about this. We have become so inured to this that I think people forget the orders of magnitude more that we pay in the richest country in the history of the world, where so much of this innovation and manufacture of these drugs even happens, and other people, because we don't allow our government to negotiate the way the markets work for everybody else for these drug prices.
It's the collusion between the big pharmaceutical companies that don't want competition and want to keep their prices high.
Yes.
And they have cozy relationships with Congress people.
Yes.
that will not support reforms, and then they have this slow-moving bureaucracy that they also have cozy relationships with that looks unfriendly toward upstart or rival or true competition from foreign competitors or other.
Yes, and I'll be talking about this in my radar as well a little bit, but it's worth remembering that Big Pharma is still, this is from Open Secrets, a recent article, Big Pharma is still largest lobbying spender as Biden signs crackdown executive order, House seeks to pass bill lowering drug prices. They are lobbying their pants off, spending more than every other industry to make sure that policies like this don't go into effect. So whether or not, Biden is uniquely susceptible to them is kind of beyond the issue.
He's not uniquely
This is not a political issue.
There's no way he's uniquely susceptible.
Right, but many people on the left were pointing this out, during the primary race,
right,
how important it is to have elected leaders who forego big money lobbying dollars like this. Biden happened to be the largest recipient of a lot of these dollars in the context of the Democratic primary, and so these kind of things deserve scrutiny. Biden took more billionaire dollars than anybody else in the race, and these things have trickle-down effects, and this is happening. This is not a partisan issue, but money in politics is a core foundational reason why common sense, bipartisan policies like this go unpassed and unenacted in the United States of America, an alleged democracy.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I was doing more, because you brought it up on the show, I was hoping we could maybe have a debate or bring some experts on to discuss it, the insulin issue, because that one's so expensive. I was looking at it, and, there's a lot of ways in which the FDA, because they get, indirectly, the government is lobbied by pharmaceutical companies to keep it the way it is, but the intellectual property protection is extreme, far too extreme.
Correct.
And the FDA has made it prohibitively has made it so prohibitive to develop generics that the only companies that could do it because the intellectual property protections don't do it because there wouldn't be enough profit because the FDA makes it too difficult. And all those things are bad.
The point of intellectual property protections is to create enough profit for people to inspire innovation. It is not intended to create the billionaires and the billion-dollar industry that exists, which has only become more profitable in the context of this pandemic and the economic downturn that the rest of the country has been suffering with, and which has prevented millions of Americans from accessing their life-sustaining and life-saving health care. So, this is a good move. I love to see people across the aisle both fighting hard, trying to outmatch each other for how hard they're going to fight for the American people. This is a good moment.
Yeah. Philosophically, it's not even the same. Intellectual property is not. It's not actual property. There's a principled libertarian argument for why the whole concept doesn't make any sense.
All right, that's a whole other panel, Robby.
All right, we'll talk about that later. And I'm looking forward to your radar, Briahna. Stay tuned.